Weathered cliff sides leave their shadows littered with trees rooted and sharp. The earth pulled beneath itself embeds these splinters facing upwards. They're unintentionally left to be navigated by those with a keen eye, as those without will live with red in their boot, trailed through their home, and left stained in their sock. I tread the beach barefoot and can't help but see the broken oak and birch as if embellished in greens, standing 20 feet above me, fastened upright by its roots. If I stood where I am, when it fell where it did, I'd be crushed. The walk back to my car is long and interrupted with a brief pause. I'm sat next to the ocean. It's windy and cold, and my fingers are slow, hesitant, and stiff. I'm staring at a bay littered and poisoned, one in which boasts only fish filled in rot and picked away by gulls. They chirp above me, shitting adjacent into the snapped seagrass, unable to grow for human hands decided. That said, I can imagine it's to avoid the loss of one of the many young children I've seen plopped about, dragged by an impatient father or chased by a tired, nervous mother. I can't help but feel uncertainty in how this heat will change, and how their future is never to be determined in how the seagrass grows, but instead as blue swallows what they knew and knotweed retakes what wasn't. Every glance I give faces reciprocal glints, each growing more and more golden and such, leaving trails of dark blue in its wake, which is noticeably cooler to my hands. I can't help to think of how this bay'd shine if we never touched it, bleached it, pissed all over it, this ugly heat of emptied cans and the reflective sheen of chip bags turned inward. As far as I've seen, this is as beautiful as it can be, this moment as a slab of frigid dark sky descends upon this cradled boy, preceded by such flaming and bright stripes of color. How could it have been better, and why couldn't I have been alive for better? But how could I complain? How could I complain knowing the state of affairs in the present, let alone the future, as I find myself beyond disturbed in reference to the topic, in terms of the days coming in their rapid approach? I seem to stare at a chasm in which divides man from what he discerns as beast. He cites the name of a cruel god invoked in dispossession, and this acidic resentment that's placed and burned into mold. The bronze sets, an ultimately solid foundation that has been ignored as newly erected, and treated as if having persisted the extinctions prior, as if it will exist in any context under the one in its rapid approach. When even the shitty birds from the bay drop dead, those that solely feasted upon its spoiled fruit. I'm afraid we've fallen victim to this great American experiment, or perhaps a larger narrative peddled for an even grander period of time, one predicated on some form of divinity or holiness, although I find ourselves contradictory. We live amongst pitfalls manufactured and set solely to spill this green leachate deep into domestic soil, slowly seeping through and under, eating away at the stone in which we stand. Children we've chosen to spare from the crushing maw of seagrass are free to be wrapped in rebar otherwise, given a few thousand miles once pushed past their backyards and beaches, a wired constraint which rips through body and fastens adolescence under rubble, concrete, and democracy. The fact is, my dollar killed that kid, as did yours. So what and where to turn as this future continues in its rapid approach? But to buy, to cite God, to pretend to care, or to simply not. And one day, our bombs will unearth the ground our homes sit atop, and those splinters that remained in place for so long will finally stand exposed, shaken from the sand, this pointed and rigid fact. And then we'll cry out in hope that we may then see what in which we have subjected, lazily doled out while we turned to buy and to cite God, as we pretended that the future held tones of white and blue rather than simply this scalding red.